Joseph was captured in Egypt, where he was thrown into the king's dungeons. And because of his heritage, he was made a slave of the other prisoners. One day, when he was bringing water for several of the prisoners to bathe in, one of them being the king's tailor, who had inadvertently left a needle in a garment he had sewn for the king, which scratched him badly, and the other, the king's baker, who had unwittingly baked a pebble in the bread which the king ate, which broke his tooth, both punishable by death. Joseph noticed that both these men were depressed, so he asked them, "Why are you feeling so?" And they said, "We have both had a dream, and there is no one here in this prison who can interpret our dreams for us." And Joseph said, "Tell me your dreams, and God will help me to interpret them for you." And they both laughed at him. "You, a slave! What do you know about dreams? Who do you think you are?" But rather than be silenced by the mockery, Joseph said to the two men, "Do you know the great Egyptian physician by the name of Kimtaz?" "Yes, of course we do," they said. "He's famous throughout all of the lands and many other lands also." So Joseph said, "Let me tell you a story of him." Kimtaz one day decided that he would travel the land and far distant places to learn of the ways of life and to heal wherever he could, not wanting any recognition or recompense. So taking a knapsack with his emoluments, his ointments, and his medicines, he set out and travelled far and wide, healing people along the way. But one day, when he was travelling down the road in the heat of the day, feeling very tired from his travels, he lay down under a tree and went into a deep sleep. While he was sleeping, a vagabond came along and noticed him in his rich clothing and wearing rags himself. The vagabond stripped off his own tattered clothing and took the rich clothing of Kimtaz, leaving Kimtaz naked on the ground, leaving his pile of rags beside him and not bothering to take the tattered kind of knapsack in which Kimtaz had his goods. So when Kimtaz woke up, found himself naked, he could only put on the rags that were left by the vagabond and make his way into the nearest town. When he was there, passing down one of the streets, he heard wailing. And so, since the door was opened, he went inside to see a couple, man and a wife, bending over the pallet of a small child, and standing by the child were 3 doctors shaking their heads, perplexed, and Kimtas overheard them saying, "We can do nothing for the boy." The parents were crying loudly, but Kimtas, not even remembering that he was dressed in rags, went to the side of the bed and said, "Let me see." And he said, "Oh, yes, I can heal this boy." And the father looked at him aghast and said, "How dare you, you ragamuffin vagabond? Who do you think you are when 3 of our best doctors cannot heal my son?" And so Kimtas left, as did the 3 doctors, leaving their son, the father and mother, to their son, wailing, stating that they could do nothing more for him. When they had left, the wife said to her husband, "Perhaps you were too harsh on that fellow. After all, we are desperate." "Oh, don't be stupid," said the husband. "Look at his garb, a vagabond, pretending to be a doctor, indeed." But just then their son let out a great cry and died. They wept until they could weep no more. Kimtas went into town, and as was his usual method, he started to cry out to people, "Come, come to me with your melodies. I will be able to help you." People gathered around and laughed at him, seeing him in his rags and tatters, and they mocked him also. And then they said to him, "Who do you think you are, dressed in this garb, stating to be a great physician?" But then Kimtas laid out on the ground the contents of his knapsack, a panoply of colours and bottles and vials, and the people were curious. And one man, covered in pussy sores, came up to Kimtas and said, "Please, won't you help me?" And after looking at him carefully, Kimtas took a small vial, a small purple vial, from his collection and put it on the sores of the man, which disappeared immediately. The people were greatly, greatly impressed. So many came to be healed in the following days. Of course, it came to the ears of the bereaved and bereft father, and he came to the place where Kimtas was, and he cried, "Please forgive me. I can see that it was by my own inability to see that my son has died. Forgive me." "So," said Joseph to the 2 men, "you see, I am a slave, wearing the garments of a slave, but I am here because of fate, and I have certain wisdom by the grace of God. So when the two men, the tailor and the baker, ingested this story, they said, please won't you interpret our dreams for us? And Joseph rightly deciphered the first as meaning that the tailor would be released within days, and that the baker would lose his head within 3. What is the deep meaning of this story for us? It's not about the lessons of humility. We know them well, having been brought to our knees many times, our head on the ground. What is the deep meaning of this story in the place we now find ourselves?
Maybe we're all beggars on the outside, but have an inner richness that we can use.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And whether people can see or not doesn't affect them, it doesn't change who they are.